Welcome, everybody. Thanks for coming tonight. Thanks to all the people out in the internet land, folks here in Bass Lake Park. I am Monty Murray. We are the South Wake Conservationists, and we're an all-volunteer organization. And we're part of the North Carolina Wildlife Federation, serving the greater Raleigh area, mostly Raleigh and points south. And our mission is to conserve and improve wildlife habitat and diversity, and we do that through conservation projects and public outreach. So check out the different ways that you can get involved if you haven't been involved, because we'd like to get you involved. At the back table over here, there's a QR code, and it brings up all kinds of things that you could do if you get interested in doing it. And we would encourage you to take a look at that. We have some upcoming activities on June 14th, we hope. I guess that's still tentative, but we're trying to get that locked in for a pollinator garden maintenance workday and aquatic plant planting here along the shore here in Bass Lake Park. On the 29th of June, we're going to have an animal signs hike, and that's part of our Eco Kids program. And then on July 19th, we have a nature scavenger hunt, which is going to be at Lake Johnson. That's July 19th, also an Eco Kids program. And then August 7th is our next webinar, and that won't be in person. That'll be a webinar, and that is about planting design for wildlife. And our very own Sarah Donahue is going to be presenting that. So I also want to mention a couple of items. One is a good news item, and the other is things that we need to raise our voices about. And one is, in terms of good news, the House, the North Carolina House, has included in their budget sustaining all three of the land trusts. And we were advocating for those last month when we had a lobby day, and a lot of people raised their voices and they included it. And it's a pretty tight budget this year. So we're pretty excited that the land trusts are funded again for this coming year, and as well as increased non-recurring funds for these land trusts because of issues that arose from Hurricane Helene. So that's really good news. And they also have funded or continue to fund the outdoor education program, which our speaker is a certified outdoor educator, and we have several other members, some are sitting here today, that are certified outdoor educators. And that program is a state-run program, and it was kind of iffy as to whether it was going to be included. It is included, so that's pretty exciting news. On things that we need to pay attention to and raise our voices about, I think are things like the Endangered Species Act. One of our members, Bob Brown, has raised this as an issue, was published in the News and Observer. But the point is, they're changing the interpretation of the Endangered Species Act. The Endangered Species Act was 50 years ago, 51 now. We celebrated the 50th anniversary last year. Is an amazing success story with the bald eagle and the grizzly bears and all these animals that were close to extinction have been brought back very successfully. It's a very important act. The change that they're proposing now is to remove protection of habitat for the animals and just protect the animals. Unfortunately, as we all know, the animals won't survive without the habitat. So it's very important that interpretation remain as originally stated. Protect the habitat as well as the animals. So that's one to keep an eye on. The other is, I guess you've heard, the National Park Service is getting dramatically reduced, about 40%. So that's going to have a pretty significant impact. So again, keep that in mind, when you're speaking to your, the powers that be, make your voice heard, and especially when you vote. So tonight, we will hear about how nature is full of incredible engineers and how animals like beavers, birds, bees, and spiders construct shelters, nests, and more to survive and thrive. We'll also see how natural builders shape their ecosystems and what their ingenuity can teach us about adaptation and resilience. Our speaker is a longtime friend of South Wake Conservationists who has hosted, assisted, and led many of our activities. She's a certified environmental educator, and she's the lead educator at Crowder County Park, where she leads public programs on wildlife, ecology, and environmental stewardship. In her spare time, I don't know where she finds spare time, but she does. She is also an outdoor educator at the Agape Center for Environmental Education and a trail guide for the Triangle Land Conservancy. She's passionate about connecting people with nature and specializes in making complex natural science topics engaging, and accessible to all ages. So, without any further delay, please welcome Sarah Goldsmith.
Thank you. Thank you. Oh, where's my clicker? Here's my clicker. All right. So I think we kind of got a gist of what we're here to learn about today. So we are going to be learning about nature's engineers, and ourselves as humans have made many feats in engineering, but before we have even stepped foot into the engineering world, nature has done it first. So we're going to get into all the different animals and critters that have done it before we have. Let's see. Oh no, not another technical issue. The clicker. Let's see. Nope. I'll let you give it a go. We jinxed the clicker earlier. I know we did.
Okay, so just
Is there like a button? Let's see. I don't know if I believe you. Whoops. Went too far. Okay. So now we're gonna get started. So thank you. Stop, guys, stop. I'm blushing. So when it comes to nature's engineers, there are a whole bunch of different animals that can do a variety of different things. Building is going to be part of it when it comes to their homes. But beyond just their homes, they also shape ecosystems that we see with beavers. They also use it for trapping food like we see with our spiders. They use it for raising their young like we see with our bees and wasps. And they have a variety of different reasons for doing what they do. But because they do the things they do, they are able to survive very well in nature. So the ones that we're going to be talking about are going to be beavers, which if you can see by my earrings, which you cannot online, I love beavers. They are my favorite. If you know me, you know I love beavers. So beavers are going to be the first ones. Then we're going to get into spiders. After spiders, we'll be talking about our birds and their nests. Then we're going to go into bees and wasps together and talk about the different nests that they make as well. So before we talk about these guys, there are some smaller critters we don't want to forget about. Those guys are going to be our ants, termites, and crayfish. So we have all probably seen a few different ant mounds that look like this in a variety of sizes. They can get very large. These are really good for aerating the ground, doing some nutrient cycling. They help kind of keep their brood in a certain temperature, especially here, because a lot of the soil they use is clay-based, so it helps insulate. So these guys are going to be really good at what they do. Now, these termite mounds are not going to be something we see here. We have a lot of underground burrowing termites. We don't normally see these large mounds. These are going to be found more in like Australia, Africa areas, but it's still an amazing feat that they do create these. And we do actually have crayfish burrows that look like this. And similar as the ants and the termites, it's really good for that nutrient cycling. And same for just keeping everything as insulated as it can be for their young. So these are going to be just some of the smaller critters that we're not going to be focusing on too heavy today, but they're still very important with what they do. So first and foremost, of course, it's beavers. So I love beavers. Beavers are going to be on here. It says nocturnal rodents. They're technically crepuscular, which means that they're up at dusk and dawn. Most people consider them nocturnal, which is why I put it in here, but they're going to be the largest rodent that we have here in North America. Second largest in the entire world. The first largest is going to be a capybara, which most people have seen in some form or another. They are very cute. I think these guys are cuter. They are going to be really great engineers. They create wetlands and different ecosystems. They're considered a keystone species, which means that they help provide and they bring a lot of benefits to a whole variety of different animals beyond themselves. So things like they like to build are going to be their dams and their lodges. So before they ever build a lodge, they're going to be starting to work on their dams. Their dams are made out of a variety of materials. Usually it's going to be rocks for the bottom to help keep things secure, a lot of different trees, branches, and logs that they use. So as you can see here, if you're in person and maybe online, this is a beaver chew. So you can see on here that it is completely clear of all the bark that's on it. That's because that's what they eat. So they don't eat wood. If they ate wood, they wouldn't be really good builders. So that's like me building something out of chocolate chip cookies. It wouldn't survive. So these guys have to eat something. So they eat the bark off of here. They'll eat small twigs and leaves, and then they use the rest of it as their building material to build up their dams. So when they're building their dams, they have to be really methodical with it because they have to build it in a certain way that when they have their lodge, they don't want to build it up too much because they want to make sure some water gets through. They also want to make sure that if they build it too strong, that it might end up flooding their lodge at a certain point. And if they don't build it good enough, then the water might freeze in the area that they are holding their water in, which makes it a lot harder for them to hunt come winter time. So these are beavers are really beneficial in general for the reasons here. Flood control is a big one. Since they are building up a dam, they are helping kind of control the amount of water that come through, especially with flash floodings. They will help hold all of that back. And with that being held back, it ends up trickling down into groundwater. So that's why we have groundwater recharge on here, because it's really important for the different trees and the plants in that general area. They all benefit, especially because the beavers are going to be taking a lot of trees down. So all those trees can help get all that water from the ground to continue growing and get more. It's also great for the wildlife habitat and biodiversity. That's a big one. So just because beavers are building up these dams and making wetlands, that's going to bring other animals in. So if you have a lot of built up like that, like a pond, you're more likely to have more fish, more amphibians, than things that are hunting those things that are hunting those things, and so on and so forth. So it benefits a wide variety of different animals with their dams. And then their lodges are going to be built in such a way that predators can't get to them. So they are big mounds, as you can see, and the only way to get into them is underwater. So if I'm a coyote or a fox, I'm not going underwater. So they are going to be super protected. They do have a tunnel that goes underneath. They pop up inside. They tend to have 2 rooms in there. They have a mud room because they get super muddy and they can kind of brush all that extra water off of them. And then they have their living area where they'll probably keep their kits, which are their young, and they'll stay with them for up to 2 years. So when they're with them for 2 years, that's going to be when they are starting to learn how to build these dams and lodges. So a lot of it is instinctual. They'll just know to do this. They know when they hear running water, they're like, I don't like that. So they're going to stop that. But they also spend 2 years with their adults. So they're able to learn off of the generations before them. And there are some beavers that will stay with their family and then actually build on existing dams and lodges and make them very large. There are some that can get thousands of feet wide. So you won't normally see that too much here, but there are a whole bunch of those more north you go as well. Especially if you're going more towards states that have their water sources freeze over more often, because the more water, the less likely it is to freeze. They also plan it really well because they start working on their dams come late summer, where they have a lot of tree growth going around. They're able to find a lot of food for storage as well. Then they are using all of that to build it up. So by the time winter comes around, they are fully secure and they don't have to worry about it. So they are very great with that. And with their sites selection, they always try to choose kind of low flowing rivers. And if they do find an area, they'll start building it up from one side to the other, starting with the side that has the slowest current, so they can build up that structure and then make it go across afterwards. So they have a lot that they think about when they're making everything that they do. So now we're going to get into birds. So the different types of nests are going to be here listed on the bottom, and we're going to get into each one of these. Some are more common than others, which we'll learn. But birds are really good at making things. Now, beavers, they have little hands. It's almost like they basically have almost little opposable thumbs. So they can do a lot of building, but birds don't have that. So it's very impressive the things that they can build without having to rely on fingers. So to start is going to be cavity nests. These are going to be the ones that something like this is considered a cavity nest. So I'll show the camera. So any of our homemade bird nests are going to act as cavity nests. When you have these, you usually have primary and then secondary cavity nesters. Your primary cavity nesters are going to be things like your woodpeckers who are going to make the initial cavity. So we do have a certain type of woodpecker here, the red-cocketed woodpecker, that specializes in the longleaf pine areas, which are around this area of North Carolina. We actually have some over at Harris Lake as well, but they are going to be really important. They're considered a keystone species because beyond benefiting themselves, they're benefiting every secondary cavity nester that comes in after them. So a lot of woodpeckers are going to be making the initial holes. Sometimes they'll 90% make their home and then be like, I really like this one. I'm going to go make another one. And then some chickadee is like, this is the best thing that has ever happened to me. And they'll move in and like, this is great. So then if you guys have ever met a Carolina wren, if they find a shoe, that is the best thing that has happened to them. So as you can see in here, this is what you might think is a wasp nest, which it is. But a wren made a home inside of the wasp nest. So they are not picky. So these are going to be our cup nesters, which are going to be next. But it's really important that when it comes to the primary cavity nesters, without them, the secondary cavity nesters would have a very limited amount of places to live, which is why kind of pre-built homes like this. I know South Wake does a lot of work with their bluebird homes and their nuthatch boxes. So those are going to be really important to make sure that these guys that wouldn't otherwise be able to find one of these cavities will have an option for somewhere to stay. And then listed behind on the bottom here are going to be some examples, and also there we'll kind of list out some. Oh, no, I go too far. Okay, there we go. So cup nests are the ones that we see the most often. So this is going to be an example of a cup nest. This was made by a robin. Robins tend to use a lot of mud when they're making theirs, so it kind of solidifies everything, keeps it insulated, and it's very strong. So this, I mean, this ain't going nowhere. That might. This isn't. So this is doing really well. You can see though, there's plastic netting in it. So a lot of these nests, including this one here, which is another cup nest, has a lot of plastic. So they will use whatever nesting material is around. Sometimes it's not the best for them, but it might keep them insulated, so it works, which is why recycling and putting all your trash away is really important. But beyond that, these guys are going to be the most common ones that we have. So this is going to be an example of a hummingbird nest. Very, very tiny. Hummingbirds are very small. This is made out of lichen, so it blends in with the tree branches. So it would look a little bit more like lichen if it wasn't older, but it will have a color that blends in very well. And it's held together by spider webs. So they will collect spider webs because why create something new when spiders have perfected it, which we'll get to, but they are going to be using that to help keep everything together, keep it strong, and the stickiness of the web will help keep it onto the branch itself. So it's not going to blow away with wind. So the cup nesters are the most common one we have. If you ever find a nest on the ground, it's most likely a cup nest. But beyond these are going to be mostly with our songbirds. And then we also have pendulous nests. These are not common here. So that's why there's only 2 birds listed right here. And this one kind of migrates through here. He doesn't really nest here too much, but they are going to be really common in more arid or kind of high temperature areas, because when they're flowing in the wind like that, they are able to cool themselves down. They stay away from a lot of flying insects that might try to bother the nest. And it's also safe from predators like snakes and monkeys, which we don't have, luckily, because that'd be cool. Honestly, I'm not mad about it. But these guys are going to be really protected from a lot of the predators that would otherwise go inside their nest and go for their eggs or their chicks. So it's a really good defense mechanism. They're super lightweight. They flow in the wind, so it's just really good for that airflow. But these guys are really amazing weavers. Any basket weaver would be blown away by these guys. So these, like I said, are going to be in a little bit more hotter areas. So they are not common here. I wish they were because they are beautiful, but these are a little more common here. These are going to be more common with our birds of prey and much larger bird species we have. They are going to be platform nests. Now, platform nests are really cool because you can have generations on generations building up a nest. You can have it go on for multiple decades, and it can get up to like 6 meters tall. It is insane how much they can build. So these are going to be common with our eagles, herons, and osprey. It's really good for them to be that high up because then they're not worried about ground predators. They have a really good circular aerial view of anything going on. So if they need to hunt, they can. And it's also just stable to be on things that are, they usually pick things that are pre-made like this. Sometimes they'll go up on just really large rocks that won't move very long. And there are some that might not go back every year, but usually they do build up over a very long time. They can get quite massive. So we don't have too many storks here, but storks are going to be very common birds that also do this as well. Let's see. So this one is a weird one. This is a mound nest. So this one is going to be very common with the different grebe species. They are going to be also with our Canadian geese. They put a little less effort into it than the grebes do. The grebes are going to build it up and then tie it into an aquatic plant so that if the water rises or the water, lessens, it'll still kind of hold where it's at. It won't flood anything. So, and they're free flowing for the most part, but they're still connected so they won't just go downstream with current. So they use a lot of the aquatic plant material around. Sometimes I know with the geese, they tend to just try to find a mound that is already existing, but still in the water. So you're safe from any of the land predators that might go after them. But these guys are going to be very minimal effort. And if you think that this is minimal effort, it is not as minimal as ground nests. So these are nothing. They're literally air. So a lot of the times they are relying on the adults to do a pretty dance and distract predators away, which more power to them. But these guys are going to be really reliant on the camouflage of their eggs. Some of them will find pebbles that look like their eggs and start putting them around, but they will just put a little indent in the ground, nothing more than that, very minimal. So if somebody messes it up, I guess they're not too worried about it because they can just dig another hole and then they're fine. So this is going to be more common with these guys. The killdeer are very known for it, but they tend to be a little more coastal where they'll have it blend in with sand as well. But they do rely heavily on the camouflage to get through. So now we're going to get into the last nest, which is our burrow nests. These guys are similar to cavity nesters. So they might utilize some old mammal holes or some holes that are just on the side of bluffs and cliffs. They're going to be super protected from predators. Most things are not going to be able to traverse that area. And we're going to be finding it with our belted kingfisher, bank swallow, and screech owl. So these two are going to be super happy about being near water if they're on a bluff or a cliff, because that's going to be where they're doing a lot of their hunting. So they are able to kind of look down and stay super camouflaged. But similar to the cavity nesters, they do usually have some sort of other animal make the hole and then they occupy it afterwards. So it's going to be protected from different types of temperatures. Since you are kind of insulated like that, you're able to kind of keep your temperature regulated. So that's going to be our last bird nest. And then we're getting into spiders. So when it comes to spiders, I have a sister who is terrified of spiders. If you are watching, tune out now. But other than that, if she sees a spider, she goes crazy. So I want to make sure. So there are these different types of webs. So if you're scared here, also, turn around. But the different ones that we have here, we have one that's more common than others, which is going to be our orb webs. So when it comes to all spider webs, they are going to have a variety of different types of silk that are used. So some spiders can have up to 7 different silks in one spider that they'll use for different building. So when it comes to our orb weavers, they always do a non-sticky structural outline where they have kind of radial lines coming in towards the middle, and they use that to be able to traverse and walk around their web without sticking to it themselves. Then they fill it in with a lot of the sticky webs, so any insect that goes into it will get stuck. Now, when it comes to these guys, I don't know if you've ever seen the zigzag pattern on them. It's called a stabilimentum. Those are going to be super cool for a variety of reasons, but one that's like an uncommon fact is that they can reflect UV light, and UV light is what attracts a lot of insects. So it's kind of a fun way that there's like almost their own little moth sheeting where they put it up there, a lot of light will reflect off, and then they catch more insects that way. It also helps strengthen the web. It's really a good support in the middle. But a lot of their webs are going to be really good with their elasticity. So if something does jump into it, it will kind of bounce back and it won't break too easy. But it's also really good because, as you can see on the last one, it's a good warning for birds. I'd be really upset if I put my whole like, well, it only takes them 30 minutes to an hour, but I would still be pretty upset if I wasted my time building a whole web and a bird got into it. So they have that for those reasons. We do also have a golden orb weaver, which actually makes their webs a golden yellow color, which also reflects UV light. So those are going to help attract more insects than the others. But the yellow garden spider is going to be the one that utilizes the stable momentum the most. So if you usually see that, it's probably this guy here. But this one is probably one of the marbled orb weavers, probably one of the more common ones that I notice. But all of them are going to have that spiral, that common like Halloween spider web look to it. And they're really good just for catching a lot of things flying through the air. So next is going to be the funnel webs. So these are going to be different because they are not trying to catch anything in their web per se. They just want something, especially ground crawling insects, just to walk across it. The second they feel a vibration in the web, they will come out and ambush their prey, catch it, and then just bring it back into their hole. So it's very low effort. They will keep these for multiple days, weeks. They don't rebuild them as often. Orb weavers, however, sometimes every single night for some species, they will eat their web that they initially made so they can get the nutrients back from it. And then the next day they'll build it all again. So some of those guys will just completely hide during the day, no web whatsoever, and then do all that work at night. So if you're ever walking on a trail and knock a web down, just know in 30 minutes, it might be back up. So on the way back, get your spider stick out, be ready. But these guys are going to be larger spiders, and they're usually found in like rock beds and any area that you would normally just find some crawling insects walking around in. So they rely mainly on ambush, and then they just drag them back in there. So then we have sheet webs. So these are also really good for ambush kind of attacks. The way they do it is you either have a bowl or a dome shaped. And when you have either one of them, your spider is going to hide on the underside of it, wait for that same vibration, kind of jump out and ambush their prey. So it's going to be really good for the same reasons, but just a different design. And these, you can see with these guys, it's the filmy dome spider, so you'll never guess which one he does. And then the bowl and doily spider. So they are going to be the ones that specialize in either one of those designs. And then the common sheet web spider, I think he does more of a bowl size as well. So, but these are really good for hiding underneath, and then they can jump out and attack. So next is cobwebs. You probably see some spiders on here you don't like too much. We like all spiders though, so thank you for attending. These guys are going to be where we have a lot of our black widows, whether it's a false black widow or your northern or your southern. But when it comes to cobwebs, don't assume you're going to have a black widow. I swear most of the time you won't. But they are going to have more of that chaotic creation of their web, and they do the randomness of it because it's a lot easier for them to rebuild if something was to go wrong with it. They just have to put one or two kind of pieces of web back up, and it's not a concern for them. So they'll always be ready for the next opportunity. But the ones that we probably see the most in them is going to be the cellar spiders. So those are going to be those really skinny spiders. You might even think that they're harvestmen or like the daddy long leg ones, but they're different. But they do similarly have very, very skinny legs and a small body. And these are going to be a lot of the house spiders you have. So if you do have cobwebs, it is most likely a cellar spider. So I would not be concerned. But these are going to be really random, and they are associated with being inside homes more often than not. So that's going to be what our cobwebs are for. I keep pressing the wrong side. Then we have our woolly webs. So these are uncommon. You don't see them too much, but they don't rely on stickiness or any kind of ambush. They actually, you have a spider that puts out its web, and then it uses the fiber, the kind of small fibers on its legs to brush it out and make it kind of fluffy. So when something walks up onto it, the electrostatic draws it in, and that's what sticks to it. It doesn't actually have sticky fibers on the silk itself. So it still traps and it still has the same kind of function, but it's definitely going to look a little bushier and a little softer or like fluffy. So it's going to have that look to it. That's going to be with these kind of spiders here. So a southern house spider. So these you might find inside your home, but for the most part, it's just going to be kind of the cool way that they use the hairs on their legs to be able to brush that all up. So that is going to be our woolly. And then we're getting into our bees and wasps. So when it comes to our bees and wasps, we have quite a few different species. They all mainly are going to rely on a similar design. So I don't know if you guys have ever seen this design before, but it's pretty common. It is a comb. These are going to be super great because the shape in which the comb is in kind of maximizes the amount of space they can have for the material they use. So they have to use less material and are able to hold a lot more. And different animals, different bees and wasps will use different kind of material to get there. So honeybees are going to have more of a waxy material, where a lot of the paper wasps will have more chewed up wood that they kind of mix with the spit in their mouth to make more of a papery material. And then sometimes some animals, or I keep saying animal, I guess they are animals. Some of them will also kind of make that underground as well and have that shape under there. But it's really good for storing their brood. So when they're raising their young, they can all stay inside of there and stay safe. It kind of provides a lot more room for them to be in. And then they're also able to hold a lot of their food in there as well. Specifically with the honeybees, that's important. So when it comes to our ground nests, these, a lot of the times we probably think of our yellow jackets, but these are also going to be a lot common with our solitary bees, which are super important bees that we have. So digger bees are going to be one of our solitary bees. We also have a few other that are going to utilize a different form of a nest, but when it comes to our ground nests, similar to with the ants and the termites, it's all very temperature controlled. So they don't have to worry about whether things are too hot, too cold, and they're able to use that material to kind of block it up if there was a rain. So they're protected, and predators are less likely to look for them under there, and they're able to kind of have a lot more room to grow. So if you're in a tree, you're kind of limited by the amount of space and structure you can connect to. But once you're in the ground, you can build a whole lot bigger. So we're used to these when it comes to our yellow jackets. So I put a star because yellow jackets are going to be under more than one category, but they definitely have their underground nests, and they are really good at camouflage. You can see a whole bunch of yellow jackets and still not know where they're coming from, which is terrifying. So that's going to be our ground nest. I did it again. Okay. Then we have our stem and wood nest. So this is going to be our mason bee will appear again later. Note. But when it comes to our stem and our wood, that's why we kind of have these things. These are called insect hotels. I don't know if you guys have ever seen these. Sometimes they are just pieces of wood that have holes drilled in them, or sometimes they're pieces of bamboo or just leftover dead-headed stems from different flowers that were left over. But that's going to be where solitary bees are going to kind of have their whole reign of that area. So these guys are going to have their own kind of brood in there. So they're super cool just because of the way that they do it. You either have leaf cutter, you can also have some that use mud, you can have some that use the papery material. So there's different materials that can be used to create this. So for a leafcutter bee, they love to take circular chunks out of leaves and bring them in there, and they'll line the inside with it. But the similar thing for every one of these guys is going to be in their chambers. They will have multiple different sections where they will put their young to raise. Some of them might feed them nectar. So they'll put a little chunk of nectar and pollen in there, lay their egg, then cover the chamber up. So once that larvae starts to grow, they'll have something to eat. Then they can kind of chew their way out and then pupate. So that's going to be what a lot of these guys do. We also do have some other ones that might utilize other food sources, which we'll get to in a second as well. But when it comes to our carpenter bees, those are going to be the ones that utilize the similar thing as paper wasps, where they're going to chew up a whole bunch of plant material and wood, mix it with the spit in their mouth, and then spit that out to create that substance that will help block everything up. So that is going to be really good for them because there's so many just random stems around that they can kind of live inside. They don't live in there more than one season, but they'll lay their brood in there and then continue moving on. I did it again. You'd think I'd learn my rights and lefts by now. So this is our paper wasp or paper nest. So these are going to be where we have our yellow paper wasps, our bald-faced hornets, which also have a star, and then our yellow jackets. So the yellow jackets are starred on here because they have their underground homes, but in their underground homes is a paper home. So they make paper nests underground, and that's where they live. So that's going to be why they're double starred. But some of them, like this guy here, is going to be ones that are kind of above ground where we see them a little more often. Almost all of these nests created by these guys are going to be underneath roofs or kind of eaves of homes. It's a lot easier to be protected because this is very, very thin, papery material. So you don't want this to hit water. So that's why they are very often near our structures, which is not fun for us, but they, seem to enjoy it. So it is very strong material, even though you might, it is papery, but it is still very strong for what it is, very lightweight. And since it is paper, similar to how like the weaving birds, you have a lot of airflow going through it. So they're able to kind of keep that temperature regulated for their brood. So you can see all of these little white dots is going to be some of their young that are inside of that comb shape. So they still utilize the comb shape even if they're underground, but the comb shape is super important. And when they build it up, sometimes they have just one little piece kind of attached to the structure. Then they start building an umbrella shape going down, and then they'll cover the outside in one more extra layer. So those are going to be super strong for as lightweight as they are, and they just use the natural material around them to do this. So these guys are super creepy. I love them, but they are very creepy. These are going to be your very snatched waist bugs. They are. You'll know when you're seeing them because they do have very, very skinny waists compared to the other bees and wasps that you'll notice. So these are going to be our mud doppers or any of the bees, and the mason bee is on here because when they work in their stem and their wood homes, they use that mud to help lock it up. So they are considered a mud nest as well. So these guys are super cool because they are able to kind of create those little, I don't know, cylindrical cells that they have on the sides of different structures and buildings. And inside of those, this is what's creepy about them. They are a spider's worst nightmare. So they will go, once they build their cell, they will go and paralyze spiders, multiple spiders, and then put them inside of a chamber with a larvae. Then they will then close up that chamber and do it again. And they will do a whole bunch of those. Now, the reason they paralyze them is because it helps the spider not decompose. So no matter how long it takes for the wasp to grow, the spider will still be a good food source for them later. So horribly terrifying for the spiders, but I guess they're doing well. So it's a scary thought, but if you don't like spiders, Emily, that was for you. Then they are very good. But other than that, sometimes they'll have these cells that are kind of next to each other in different chambers, or sometimes you'll just find a small little kind of one cell area, but they don't start hunting until after they have already made their chamber. Then once they have finished making their chamber, they'll go grab the spiders that they find, paralyze them, put them in there. It's very creepy. Then they will stop it up, and then they will keep doing more cells on there until they move to their next section. So the way that they do it, and the reason they don't necessarily use the comb shape is because the shape they're doing is the furthest extent that their mouth can go. So they will pick up mud and carry it up to a certain area that they want to build on. They will chew it up and then kind of spit it in a circle like that. So as far as their head and their mandibles will go is going to be the shape in which it's making. And it dries really fast. So once they spit it out, it immediately dries, and then they keep getting more. So it can take a while for them to create one. But sometimes if you are a scientist and trying to study a lot of spiders, you will actually go for a mud dopper nest, take it down and try to look at what spiders are in there, because that's a way easier way to start locating spiders, and they're not going to move. So they are a little paralyzed. So yet again, creepy, but it's also very good for if you are a spider scientist, more power to you. Honestly, oh my goodness, I couldn't do it. But beyond that, these are going to be the ones. So for this guy, you might notice he kind of shines like a blue iridescent color if you see him flying around. And then these guys are just mean. But other than that, So the key takeaways from the whole presentation is just that we do create a lot of different things. We have tools, we have buildings and skyscrapers that we make. But before we were ever here, we had all of these animals and critters that were making them way before we ever did. Now we have blueprints that we use. They don't. They are not lucky enough to have that. They just go straight off of instinct. So even if there are structures for their homes, or if they are going to be kind of traps for their food, or a place for their brood to grow, it's all going to be very beneficial for that species to keep growing and generations to continue. So the beavers obviously are my favorite. They are very important. But beyond these guys, it's going to be just a lot of different reasons for what they do. It's just very impressive that they are able to create all of these things. And over the generations, a lot of these designs have not changed because they have just perfected it so well. So if you guys have any questions, you can feel free to ask. I do have a few questions if you guys want to answer these, if you don't have your own questions. So my favorite one is just if you have any structures that you've seen in your own environment or your own home that have been super unique, something like a wren nest inside of a wasp nest. There was also a mud dopper nest that was attached to it. I broke it off by accident. Don't tell anybody. But that was also on here. And then it was covered in spider webs. So honestly, that was a full game right there. So, but if you guys have any questions, you can feel free to ask. And then I think we also might take some from online as well. This one. Don't hand anything tech-wise to Monty. We can go back and forth. I trust you're loud enough.
Testing there. Okay. Just have to bang it enough times. So first of all, thank you, Sarah. But yeah, go ahead. Give it up for Sarah. Yeah. And what I'd like to do now is take some questions from the audience and stop share. Stand there.
Oh, I should stand there.
Okay.
I'm being
And I have an assistant here. I've been fired, so we have a new technician. What's your name?
Tucker.
Okay, thank you so much he will be running the microphone around. So if you will raise your hand, the first hand up gets the mic.
All right.
Only if you touch it.
Really wasn't paying attention.
Oh, I don't know.
Oh,
Hey, so I was wondering, we saw it was a really huge winged like creature walking through the yard. We could see it from our deck and it had red on it. Somebody said it was a cow eater.
Cow.
Something. Cow eaters. Or ant or.
It was like ant cow.
Something, yeah, I don't know what it was.
Well, I'm like, it could be either one of the European hornets or even the cicada killer.
And
So-
that was another, we had a really huge hornet in a
Mhm.
house. And we caught that, but I've never seen anything like it before.
Yeah, I've seen those guys sting honeybees out of the sky and just they are brutal. But they are big and they do have that red marking on them. So it could be a European hornet or it could be a cow killer.
Yeah, we saw two of those, but we live on a farm and luckily it's.
Hopefully you don't have cows.
There's no cows, actually. There's chickens, chickens and goats. But we actually saw them walking through the grass as we were sitting on the deck. So they were massive.
Yeah. Okay. So,
I was looking for a picture of it, but I can't.
yeah. Well, I'm like, if you can find one, feel free to show me. But I do think it could be most likely a European hornet. But if they are that large, that's great. That's pretty cool.
So, thank you. I was wondering about the beavers. Do they do a lot of damage to forest, to the trees?
So They do a lot of damage per se, but I will say the benefit they bring in the biodiversity always outweighs it. And plus, within 5 years, almost every one of the trees they cut down, since they don't disturb the roots, you will always see branches growing off of them and they will become big trees again. So when you first have beavers in an area, it looks like they're devastating an area, but if you give it 5 years, it all jumps back, especially if you're in an area with that groundwater recharge. I would say that they provide way more benefits than they do negatives. But I can see if you're living in like a residential area and all your trees are starting to disappear, how that can be upsetting. But give it a few years and a lot of those will bounce back pretty fast.
I grew up in Mississippi and I remember the state had a bounty on beavers. And I wonder if North Carolina does that, or is that?
So North Carolina, they are very protected here. So you can't even relocate them. And if you do have to relocate them, they have to pass away in order to do that. Most of the time, in order to catch them, you have to use an underwater snare. And since they are mammals that breathe air, they don't survive that. But because of the ecological impact they have, it is very unwelcome to move them to different areas. So there's no bounty on them here. But I have seen other areas that do have bounties on them. I just know that here they're a little more protected in North Carolina.
Anyone else?
Which ants are poisonous that we have to worry about? Ants.
Well-
Ants are like a poisonous.
Well, if you're eating them, then maybe.
Well,
but
they bite you. They have some kind of a venom to it.
well, when it comes to some of the fire ants and things like that are going to be kind of related to wasps, so they will have some sort of a venom to them. But when it comes to poison is something you eat. Venom is something that happens to you, so it's
Okay.
more of a venom than a poison. But it does have a little bit more of a itchy bite to it.
But
So
they're here.
they are, yes, yeah. If you ever stepped on a red anthill, they are here. You'll know that. I'll tell you, I got some bites on my legs to show, but I won't.
Okay, we have a question from online. How long can a beaver stay underwater?
Well, they can stay underwater for, I want to say 15 minutes. It could be a little longer, but they don't really need to stay under too long. Usually when they come out from under that lodge, under the tunnel, they can pop back up. But they do have these flaps on their ears and nose that help make it so, like, if I'm jumping in water, I'm holding my nose. I don't know about you guys, but they help kind of protect themselves from things like that. So they are able to last longer underwater than we are, but they don't necessarily need to because they are herbivores. So they're going to be going above water for their food sources and things. So they usually don't stay under for long.
And then are beavers more common on the east or west side of the state?
So, I mean, it's kind of similar all around because they are just generally in North America that they're pretty prevalent now. That they weren't prevalent previously. They had to be reintroduced into the area, into the kind of country as a whole. But once they took over very well. So North America is going to be the most common. They do have some invasive species, like versions of them kind of in South America in the very, very southern portion. But here it's going to be pretty equivalent on both sides.
Anyone else have any questions?
Last time I was at my grandma's house and she put gasoline and what was it, walnuts?
No, the yellow jackets.
Yep. Yeah.
And they came out of her stinker like 53,000 times.
That'll happen. Yeah. So I know one time I tried to kind of, because since I work at a public park, we do have sometimes where there are yellow jacket nests very close to the trail, and we want to try to avoid that. So I know that one time I've tried to take care of a nest using a chemical, and I was unaware that there was a second hole that they were coming out of, and I was running as fast as I physically could. Did I ever do track? No, but you thought I did. So, but they absolutely will come after you. They can actually release a pheromone that will make the rest of their brood come for you. So it's pretty brutal. It's pretty brutal. Oh no. That's not fair. So, but it looks like you're fine now. So we're all good. Maybe we just don't go near the yellow jackets anymore. Is anybody else?
Hold at the bottom, sir. What's the average age that beavers get to?
So about 20. So, and they can get up to 100 pounds, 110 pounds. So they are quite large. They're larger than you think they are. Usually you think, because even with groundhogs are pretty big, but they're smaller than beavers. So you usually think they're about the same size, but beavers are pretty large. And they also can be kind of territorial. So I know that there are some stories of people encountering them on like golf courses and things where they will get charged. So, yeah, they're quite territorial, so it's kind of you want to stay away from them if you can. But they are quite large and can live a pretty good amount of time for a mammal.
You referred to solitary bees.
Hmm?
Why is there any particular reason why they're called solitary?
Yeah, they don't live in a hive, so that you will have one female that is her queen and is her own worker and is her own soldier. So honestly, independence, we love it. So she will make her own little hole in the ground. It almost looks like a very tiny anthill. Now sometimes they'll socialize with other ones where they'll each have their own individual hole nearby, but they usually look for areas in the ground that kind of soak up water fast, so they don't have to worry about anything flooding in. But you'll have one singular queen bee inside of there. She'll make one initial hole and then have a few chambers off where she'll kind of lay her eggs in, but they usually stay completely alone for the most parts. But they do sometimes socialize. So you might see a few mounds near each other, but they won't be in one big colony like our other ones.
Becca asked, what kind of birdhouses do you recommend for nuthatches?
So I mean, I would talk with Jeff Allen over here. So 'cause he's the one that actually helped construct all of the bluebird and the nuthatch boxes and the bat box and every other box you could think of, honestly. But he's the one that does a lot of that work. There are certain sizes, shapes, directions to face them, size of the holes that are a little more particular. Yeah, he said Google it.
And I can also say from personal experience, I was researching this recently myself. And for brown-headed nuthatches, the recommendation is for a wren house or a house with a diameter hole of 1 inch or 1 1/8 inch. So there you go. Google it. And the smaller the hole, the better for nuthatches. Another question, do you ever recommend calling people to remove a wasp or hornet nest or just leave it be?
It kind of depends on where you are in the area. Now, I would say if it's really close to where people are going to be living and just walking consistently, I would remove it. Now, there is one way you can remove it yourself where you were saying earlier gasoline. So if you take gasoline into a bowl or some sort of a tub and kind of hold it up against the nest, they will all end up falling out and kind of suffocating. It's kind of sad, but honestly, it's wasps. So they'll all kind of fall into their bucket and then you take it down and then it's all good. You can remove the nest after that. But you know, if you feel like it's large enough and you want to call somebody, you can. I just think for the most part, if it's not bothering anybody, that you probably don't have to.
Emily asks, what kind of material is the beaver's tail made of that makes it so tough?
So it's kind of a leathery material. So I have a taxidermy beaver in my car, which sounds super weird, but I didn't bring it in here. They are very large and flat, and they're really good for padding all the mud and material into their dams and lodges. So their lodges are usually kind of molded with a lot of mud and clay on the inside for that insulation factor that a lot of animals use. So they're really good tools for them, and it's good for swimming and alerting things of predators and things. I will say that the material, on the inside is just going to be regular kind of fleshy material, but then the outside is going to have a stronger leathery substance to it. I couldn't tell you exactly what it is though.
Yeah, is there any kind of maintenance you need to do on the wood stick nest?
Oh, yes. So they only use them one season. So once anything is in there and they're kind of feeding on what's in there, you'll see, you'll notice that there's going to be a little hole at the very beginning. If there's a hole on it, you can take that entire stick or bamboo piece out and replace it with a new one, because that means that the previous larvae pupated and emerged. So you don't want to they will not reuse a chamber at all. So that's why I usually recommend doing something like with this kind of this kind of design with it because it has like the interchangeable ones where you can pull out some. Some people do like to do this, like circles or just pieces of 2x4 that they drill holes into, which works. It's just you can't reuse it. So if you want to be able to reuse them, just keep an eye on it after the season's over. If you see a hole on the very end of it, that means it's done for. You can pull it out and then put a new one in. And if you want to have a cool little thing to look at, you can kind of slice it in half and be able to see the chamber since it's not being used anymore.
Any other questions?
Do beavers eat the bark or the cambium under the bark? What is the part anatomically of the plant that beavers are eating?
They eat the bark itself, but they will also eat that second layer. But they do prefer just the bark. I mean, when they're going after it, since their teeth are so strong and so hard. So it's like this is a beaver skull that I found. And since they're rodents, their teeth never do stop growing. So this tooth is of a beaver, and you can see it is extremely long. And it will keep growing, but it goes all the way up into their skull, like completely surrounding that. So they need to keep whittling things down with it in order for their teeth to not grow to the point they can't open their mouth anymore. So they will kind of keep going after some logs if they need to, but they will just eat the bark, twigs, leaves, things like that.
Generally, how many babies do beavers have?
So they'll usually have anywhere from like 2 to 3, not more than that for the most part. And then they'll stay with them for about 2, maybe 3 years, but usually 2 years.
So what's our biggest predator?
Of beavers, probably coyotes, here, because we don't have too many bears and things around here, but like they are pretty large. So it's going to be more coyote than anything.
So the coyote won't go into the den,
No,
obviously.
because the only access point is going to be going underwater. So the coyote will not go underwater into that tunnel to pop up in the lodge to go for them. They'll wait for them to all come out and start kind of learning how to swim and being really cute. And then they're like, "Arr." So that's what they wait for.
Anyone else have any questions? No? Oh, sorry, sir.
Do the beavers mate for life?
For the most part, I mean, it's hard to find monogamous animals in the wild, but they usually do. But sometimes they might split off. You know, divorce happens, so can't control it. Any other questions?
Oh,
I see 3 people pointing at her.
I will have, like usually in the fall, these little mounds of white sand that they've dug up, and I figure it's a solitary bee.
Most likely.
But I will kind of dig down and I can't find a hole or anything. So how far down in the ground do they actually go if I can't dig down to find them?
They can go as deep as 3 feet down, but they will usually keep it about 6 to 8 inches, maybe up to 10. Like they're kind of the average. But they will go as deep as 3 if they're kind of that one solitary bee is using it consistently. Then they'll go further down to make more chambers for more brood. But normally you should be able to find it at about like 8 inches. So if you did dig down and maybe didn't find it, it might have just been kind of a loose. If it was a loose material, it could have just accidentally filled itself in when you were looking. But
And there'll be lots of little mounds. It's like the grass is all at once sand.
and they usually prefer well draining material and open fields. And they don't go far away from where they're at to look for their pollen and nectar. So usually about 300 feet in any direction is where they're going to go. So if you have any kind of flowers nearby or any plants that need pollinating, that's kind of going to be what they go for. But they are really important pollinators compared to like the honeybees are pollinating. Like every time they land on a flower, it's about 5% of the time they have a success rate for pollination, which is still pretty good. But a lot of our solitary bees can be up to 95%. So about every 100 flowers they land on, 95 of them have successfully been pollinated. So they are super important, even though they are not really loved as much as the honeybee, but I love them. So that's what matters.
So how many young do they have per
That just kind of depends on how much she's getting out in the world, you know? So, I mean, if she's getting out, meeting all the cute guys, then, you know, quite a few. But otherwise, you know, it could be, she can have up to about 20, you know, within a season, but usually it's not going to be too many, just because it's just not necessary. And it's just a lot more work for her to maintain since it's just her and she doesn't have worker bees to help kind of feed them. So she'll usually just do about as many as she thinks she can feed for the season.
So for cleaning out the insect hotels, what's the end of the season?
So the end of the season is going to be about like fall, usually like end of fall. So whenever you would usually clean out like bluebird boxes and your bird houses and things like that, it's about the same time you can do this. And then they'll come back early spring. And depending on the species, it could be super early spring and they might be your really early pollinators. But that's why it's really nice to have it kind of set up by usually February. But you can clear it out from November. So usually anywhere from November to February is good to clear it out and reset. Yeah, so
The red one. Oh, sorry. The huge myrtle hornet. But I don't know if that's what we had in our house, but we found a massive hornet.
yeah, so they're not prevalent here. I think that was more of like a scare. We didn't really have
We
a
never
lot.
had 'em.
Not
Okay.
really, no. But you know, they are terrifying if you do find them. So if you do find them, let somebody know, let your local wildlife federation make them aware.
Yeah.
Do you have any flower recommendations for early spring?
That's a good one. So, I mean, when it comes to early spring, I will say there's a lot of different asters that are always very good. I feel like Courtney would have a really lot to say on this, but there, you know, when it comes to obviously always do native plants, always, but that's just us talking. But there's a lot of different ones that would be best. It's just kind of depends on what species you're trying to go for, because different species of different bugs and insects are going to go for different plants. So if there's certain species you're looking to go for, I would just look up best pollinator plants for those species, because some will just completely avoid certain flowers and some will go to all. So it really depends on what you're specifically going for. But I think even you guys on the Wildlife Federation website have a lot of really good resources for that.
Any other questions?
I'll talk about beavers all night. Up to 110 pounds. They're chunkies. I love them. The second you touch it.
Hello. Further questions? All right. I want to thank you very much for giving us this grand tour of the animal world. Sarah, I think everybody enjoyed it. I know they did. Those that are online, this concludes the webinar portion of our program. So we're going to be signing off. Those of you who are in the room, we have a bit more to do, so don't leave. Good night, folks on the internet.